Former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice annihilated Sunny Hostin live on her own show, leaving Sunny shaken and speechless by her extraordinary confrontation. This was nothing like what she was used to on The View, and it didn't end quickly. Sunny kept interrupting, but Condi shut her down with her clever and mouth-stopping move.
But I'm going to tell you, I live in California, not Washington, D.C. And the American people do have other concerns that we ought to be thinking about and talking about.
Respectfully,
and
Madam
so,
Secretary, I think
well, let me finish now, Sunny.
The heated moment in the conversation came when Sunny kept pushing, trying to steer the conversation back to January 6th, but Condi wasn't playing along. She doubled down, calmly explaining that while accountability matters, the average American isn't sitting at their kitchen table worrying about what happened at the Capitol. They're stressed over rising grocery bills, skyrocketing gas prices, and a struggling economy.
Now, I think what Senator McConnell may be referencing is, yes, it's time to move on in a lot of ways. I'm one who believes that the American people are now concerned about their what we call kitchen table issues, the price of gasoline.
Sunny, clearly frustrated, tried to press again. She brought up democracy being at risk, hoping to catch Condi in some sort of contradiction. But Condi wasn't rattled. She simply pointed out that preserving democracy doesn't just mean looking back. It means addressing the problems people face right now. And right now, Americans are exhausted by inflation, failing schools, and a political class that seems more focused on scoring points than fixing problems.
We ought to move on to the next generation, move ahead and deal with the American people's issues.
It's really politically expedient for Mitch McConnell to say, let's move on, let's move on. The problem is that past will become...
At this point, Sunny was visibly irritated. She wasn't getting the soundbite she wanted. Condi, on the other hand, was the picture of composure. She wasn't dismissing history. She was just refusing to let it be used as a distraction from the present. And the more Condi calmly laid out her argument, the more obvious it became that Sunny was losing control of the discussion.
Also know that as a government and as a country, we've got to be concerned about the things that are making life hard for Americans and hard for American families.
The tension was palpable as Condi effortlessly shut down Sunny's attempts to twist the conversation. She laid out a clear, compelling argument about parental involvement in education. Condi made it clear that parents should have a role in shaping what their kids are being taught, especially when it comes to values like personal responsibility and respect for others. Sunny, however, wasn't thrilled. She threw out the usual criticisms, suggesting that Condi's approach ignored the complexities of today's educational issues.
First of all, parents ought to be involved in their children's education.
Should.
Their children are in school 7 hours. That's a very formative period. And I think parents ought to have a say. We used to have parent-teacher conferences. We used to have PTAs. There are lots of ways for parents to be involved, and they should be.
But Condi wasn't having any of it. She calmly pointed out that many of today's educational struggles are being fueled by divisive narratives around race. Narratives that are doing more harm than good, especially to young children who are just learning about the world. And then came the knockout blow. She blatantly declared that she would like Black kids to be completely empowered to know they are beautiful in their Blackness. But to do that, she doesn't have to make white kids feel bad for being white.
Somehow, white people now have to feel guilty for everything that happened in the past. I don't think that's very productive. Or Black people have to feel disempowered by race.
You could practically feel the air shift. Sunny was visibly taken aback, shifting uncomfortably in her chair as Condi delivered this mic drop moment. It was a powerful, unapologetic statement that left no room for misinterpretation. Condi's message was clear. Empowerment isn't about tearing others down. It's about lifting everyone up. Sunny, for once, had no words. The rest of the table seemed stunned as Condi's message echoed. It was a rare moment of pure clarity in a sea of political noise. And you could tell that this was a conversation that Sunny, and probably the whole room, wasn't ready for.
It goes back to how we teach the history.
That's what I'm saying.
We teach the good and we teach the bad of history.
Yeah,
but what we don't do is make 7- and 10-year-olds feel that they are somehow bad people because of the color of their skin. We've been through that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we don't need to do that.
As the conversation shifted to race relations, the tension reached new heights. Sunny and the other hosts continued to push the narrative that race relations today are worse than ever. But Condi wasn't about to go along with that. With quiet authority, she reminded everyone of her personal history growing up in Jim Crow-era Alabama. Her words hit hard. Let's drop this notion that we're worse off today. That implies we've made no progress. And that's simply not true.
It feels worse now when we're talking about race, or it just feels like a divisive environment.
It sure doesn't feel worse than when I grew up in Jim Crow, Alabama. Okay, so let's drop this notion that we're worse race relations today than we were in the past. Really? that means we've made no progress?
The impact of that statement was undeniable. Sunny's face said it all. She was visibly flustered, her arguments falling flat against Condi's lived experiences and fact-based approach. It was as if Sunny had been trying to sell a narrative, but Condi's history and calm delivery dismantled it in seconds. This wasn't just a debate, it was a reality check. Condi reminded everyone that while there's still work to be done, it's essential to acknowledge the progress that's already been made. Her words resonated with viewers at home, a sharp contrast to the constant narrative of division.
People who say, you know what, it's top down. It starts with the president. It starts with the words that he speaks.
Come on, all right? I would be the first to say we need to watch our language about race. We need to watch that we don't use dog whistles to people who...
But the real tipping point came when Condi spoke directly to the heart of what Americans are facing today. She clearly expressed the sentiments of the American people that they are tired of being told what to think. We need empathy, not division. It was also announced by Eric Adam on the same show, The View.
We've reached a point in this country where we no longer want to engage in conversation.
These are the kind of moments Sunny couldn't ignore. But let's get back to Condi, who wasn't just speaking to her co-hosts. She was speaking to the audience, laying out what truly matters, issues that affect everyone. And Sunny, frustrated, couldn't help herself. She interrupted once again, raising her voice in a last-ditch effort to keep the conversation focused on her perspective. But Condi, she remained unshaken. She calmly reiterated that the real issues, the ones people actually care about even under Biden's watch, are the kitchen table concerns, inflation, the border crisis, and the skyrocketing cost of living.
My parents never thought I was going to grow up in a world without prejudice, but they also told me that's somebody else's problem, not yours. You're going to overcome it, and you are going to be anything you want to be. And that's the message that I think we ought to be sending to kids.
The applause that followed was deafening. It was clear who had won that round. Sunny's attempts to steer the conversation and dominate the narrative had completely backfired. Condi's composed and fact-driven responses not only shut down the criticism, but earned her the audience's approval. Whoopi, sensing the tension and the defeat, quickly tried to change the subject, but the moment had already passed.
Bold, courageous, intelligent, beautiful, you can name it. That's why they hate them. That's why they can't stand them. Their feelings be hurt. They want to cry. They cry themselves to sleep at night. They losing their minds.
Sunny's frustration was obvious, but Condi had done what she does best. She made her case with poise, leaving her critics scrambling. What a moment, what a performance. But let's not forget that it's the first time the View panel has been schooled on race by their guest.
So a lot of people equate colorblindness to I don't see race or to pretending not to see race. I think that's a big mistake. We all see race, right? And we're all capable of being racially biased, so we should all be self-aware to that point.
Just like Condi, Coleman Hughes walked onto The View knowing exactly what kind of reception he was in for. His book, The End of Race Politics, Arguments for a Colorblind America, directly challenges the kind of rhetoric that fuels the show's daily discussions. And with Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, and Sunny Hostin sitting across from him, it was clear this wasn't going to be a friendly exchange. Coleman later accepted the fact that he didn't know what kind of confrontation he was going to have at the show. But was his response like rapid-fire round?
The reason I wrote this book is because in the past 10 years, it has become very popular to, in the name of anti-racism, teach a kind of philosophy to our children and in general that says your race is everything, right? And I think that is the wrong way to fight racism, and that's why I wrote this book.
From the start, Coleman stayed composed, ready to defend his argument that race should no longer be the defining factor in how America operates. But the hosts, they weren't having it. Whoopi jumped in first, questioning whether a colorblind society was even possible. She framed it as an unrealistic ideal, arguing that race is too ingrained in American history to simply be moved past.
Appointing of very specific racial things, like women couldn't get into colleges. If you were a black person, there were a lot of colleges wouldn't accept you. Trying to equal.
Coleman didn't flinch. He calmly explained that being colorblind doesn't mean ignoring race. It means refusing to let it dictate policy, opportunity, or personal interactions. He pointed out that America has made incredible progress in race relations, and that continuing to divide people based on skin color only worsens the problem rather than solving it. But before he could finish, Joy Behar interrupted, claiming that the colorblind approach was just another way to dismiss systemic racism. How do you explain all the inequalities that still exist? She asked, her tone dripping with skepticism.
But we have to know when we're going forward and when we're going backwards, and we're going backwards when we're doing woke kindergarten in San Francisco you didn't hear about this story?
Coleman was ready for this. He broke down the difference between acknowledging history and being trapped by it. Yes, inequalities exist, but constantly filtering everything through a racial lens isn't the solution. He pointed to examples of successful policies that uplift communities without resorting to racial preferences, school choice, economic empowerment, and strong family structures. Then came desperate lady Sunny Hostin. She wasted no time going on the attack.
Dr. King, I'm not only a student of Dr. King, I know his daughter, Bernice, right? So I'm going to get to my question.
Go ahead, go right ahead.
I think the premise is fundamentally flawed. You claim that color blindness was the goal of the civil rights movement.
Sunny Hostin came prepared with gotcha quotes, thinking she had Coleman Hughes cornered, but he was more than ready. Instead of scrambling, he calmly referenced the paragraphs that followed the very quotes she cherry-picked, dismantling her argument in real time. Caught off guard, Sunny pivoted. Rather than standing by her own criticism that Coleman is a right-wing puppet, she framed it as something other people say, but Coleman didn't let it slide. He directly called out the baselessness of the claim, asking for evidence.
I don't think there's any evidence I've been co-opted by anyone, and I think that that's an ad hominem tactic people use to not address really the important conversations we're having here. And I think it's better, and it would be better for everyone if we stuck to the topic.
Sunny immediately backtracked, but Coleman wasn't playing that game. He refused to get dragged into a debate over selective interpretations of his work. He shut it down masterfully, and with that, he made it clear. If Sunny or the audience wanted to understand his views, they could read the book for themselves. Simple, direct, and completely unshaken.